We will be going over placing commas after introductory elements. So what is a quote-unquote comma after introductory element grammatical concept referring to? Essentially, a comma after introductory element refers to the need of inserting a comma after an incomplete thought that introduces another thought. This introductory element simply cannot exist in a sentence by itself, which is why it needs the introduced element immediately after it with a comma between the two of those. In this video, of the several parts of this grammatical concept, I will be going over examples that do not use AWOOBIS-based transition markers. These AWOOBIS-based introductory elements will be covered by Ms. Berg in her video. There will be a link included in the description below to her video, should you want to use or should you need to use that video as an additional resource. So, how do you know or how can you spot an introductory element? Well, consider these following examples from songs. In the first one, if you cannot find the way, just listen for my song. Imagine if those two parts were sentences with periods after them. If you cannot find the way, what do you do if you can't find the way? You need to know the second part, just listen for my song, for that to be a complete thought. And you can sort of tell what an introductory element is because of that. They have typically a subject and a verb, but they're missing a complete thought, and the complete thought comes from what is being introduced. In the second one, which is a little bit different, a girl can get somewhere in spite of stringy hair or even just a bit bowed at the knee. If she can show a faultless personality, you have two introductory elements. The first one, a girl can get somewhere in spite of stringy hair. The second one, or even just a bit bowed at the knee, which is just basically an addition to the first one, which both have a subject, a girl, verbs, get and bowed at the knee, which are both kind of verbs. However, they're missing the complete thought part of the sentence, which is demonstrated by if she can show a faultless personality. And I included this example because I wanted to show you that commas after introductory elements are not always just two clauses. Sometimes there's three clauses, sometimes there are four, but they need to be separated by commas nonetheless. And introductory elements, regardless of how long they are, so the first one's pretty long, they're not complete, and they really do need that introduced element in the form of if she can show a faultless personality. In the third example, I wake up in the morning and I wonder why everything's the same as it was. Imagine if somebody turned to you and said, I wake up in the morning and I wonder. You might be wondering what they wonder, and that's a perfectly natural reaction to have, because the first quote-unquote sentence, I wake up in the morning and I wonder, it has a subject, I, and two verbs, wake and wonder, but it's missing what does this person wonder. So the first part of the first sentence, I wake up in the morning, that one's fine, but then they add on the and I wonder part of it, which makes that whole first part incomplete and requiring the second half, why everything's the same as it was. So what do these look like in sentence form instead of a poetic form? Well, these are what they would look like in that way, and you can sort of see how adding the commas in this way increases the readability of these sentences. So you can see, especially in the second one, which has three clauses and is kind of lengthy, Imagine trying to read that without any commas at all. It would be a nightmare to try and understand what that's saying, and that's why we really need commas after introductory elements, to separate the two halves of the sentences and keep everything straight. So how does this concept work with dialoguing? It actually works in the same way that of the examples we went through, which are in a way dialogue in and of themselves. But let's focus on these. So I've included grammatically incorrect examples here, without commas, without quotation marks here, because I want you, for the next minute, to pause the video and try to figure out where the commas and the quotation marks go in these sentences. Once that's done, we're going to look at the correct versions of these. So, in the first one, seeing the dragon bound towards his troop, Damon exclaimed, "Brace thyself." You have the first introductory element, seeing the dragon bound towards his troop, Damon exclaimed. This is not complete by itself. You really do need the dialogue, and this is where the comma after introductory element comes in. You have the first part that introduces what's going to be said, and then the second part, which is what's actually being said. And this is the same in the second one as well. You said, you might ask, well, how does this concept work with dialogue? And while you could say, well, how does this concept work with dialogue by itself, if you say, you might ask, you need a comma and you need to introduce what's being said immediately afterwards. And this is how this concept looks with dialogue. And this is how you could represent an understanding of this concept in your own writing. So, what's the best way to sort of recognize where a comma should be in a sentence? Well, consider this visual representation. Here we have introductory Ian, who is introducing the speaker, and he represents the first introductory clause. Separating the two, we have a comma leaf, and then we have the stars looking down, shining upon our speaker, as it is important and should be recognized from the rest of the parts of the sentence. And important Izzy is going to say what she has to say, and she is the dialogue part of the sentence. So you can see how it is probably the most important part of the sentence. Everything's sort of pointing into it, and that's how you can sort of recognize where a comma should be placed. It should be placed before the quotation marks and before the statement that's being said. So as a sort of recap, we always have the introductory element introducing what's being said, and then the speaker saying what's being said. And that's the best way to tell where a comma should be in a sentence as it relates to dialogue. I hope this video was informative for you. Here are my works cited should you want to see more of the songs that I went over. Once again, it would be a good idea for you to check out Miss Berg's video as she goes over more common examples of commas after introductory elements with the awubis-based examples. Enjoy writing the rest of your stories and have a nice day.